Yeah, so the recording has started. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. Great. I think we got it switched over so everybody can see it. Good. Good. So feel free to put questions in the chat area. And yes, share your name and your school district, just so we know that we are who we're helping out today.
Love it. You got your website there.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for sharing, and we welcome you to the MSBA running for the school board, a primer, if you will, for those that are candidates for the school board. And I know we also have others joining us that are perhaps some clerks for the school board, as well as superintendents. So we appreciate everybody's input, and what we want to provide to you is kind of an overview in that what it means to run for the school board in the state of Minnesota. And then we can work with you to answer some questions, but then some of those that are more specific to your school district and what it means to be a school board specifically in your school district. We would want you to talk to your current board chair, superintendent, and they can help you figure that out, because some school districts do it a little bit differently, in that how many committees you're on and how much time commitment we're looking at as well. Okay, so continue to put your name and your school district that you live in or are thinking to run as a candidate for in the chat area, if you will. All right. If you have any questions or issues, certainly let us know. And just a reminder that this is being recorded today. Okay. Great. So we're going to introduce ourselves as the 3 staff members that you have on here that will be presenting. Just want to note that we also have one of our other staff members, Jameson Silliman, and he's helping us out with some of the technology if you have any questions. Okay. So Paula, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Katie. Welcome, everyone. Good to have you here today. My name is Paula O'Loughlin, and I serve as the Associate Director of Board Development here at MSBA. I'm coming up on the big year, 1-year anniversary on July 1st, and just thrilled to be working with the organization and serving school board members, former school board member myself. So thank you all for considering this most noble of services.
You bet. Great. Thanks, Greg. I'm going to let you go next.
Okay. I'm Greg Abbott. I'm the Director of Communications. Also handle a lot of elections and referendum questions. And I've been around for going on 18 years now.
Great. Great. Super. I'm Katie Kleindrud. I'm the Director of Board Development at MSBA. As Paula mentioned, a former school board member myself, but before coming on at MSBA and working on I think I'm going to be coming up on my 14th year here. So glad to be here. So glad that we can provide this virtually. We've always had a similar resource on our webpage with a PowerPoint that had audio connected to it, but to now be able to offer it virtually. So glad that this is working out for many of you. Just a reminder that this is, it's recorded, but it'll be on our website as well. So if you know of somebody that was unable to make it today, or you wanted to view this again, we will have this recording on the website as well. Okay, great. Just some housekeeping here. You're in Zoom, we're in Zoom. And so if you can see us as well as see the PowerPoint, you're in. But you're more than welcome to ask questions, type in the chat area. And if you go down to the bottom of your screen or wherever you have your toolbar for Zoom, there you'll see an area. It's those 3 dots or ellipses. And in there, it lets you click on the chat and be able to put something in. again, welcoming and thanking our staff member who's helping with any technical issues or if you're aware of somebody else that might be having that's Jameson Silman. His phone number is there, 507-934-8137. You can just give him a call. If he doesn't answer, leave a message because then he may be on with somebody else and he will get back to you as soon as possible. All right. So I'm going to ask everybody else, other than our 3 staff members here, to mute your microphone. Okay. And so then, great. All right. So let's get into the presentation here. Okay. Move some things around for me. There we go. So the Minnesota School Boards Association, that's who you're joining here today for the presentation. And we are the professional organization for Minnesota's publicly elected school boards. Okay, so School Boards Association, that's why we're here for school boards in working to help you do your job the best you can. And then that means the best we can do for our students in the state of Minnesota. We're a nonprofit. We're a voluntary organization. We're not state regulated, and we have no regulatory powers ourselves. All right. So founded in 1920, that means, yes, this year we're celebrating our 100th anniversary as an association. And so we have Paula and a couple other staff members that are celebrating their 1 year this year. And there are none of us that have been actually at the association 100 years. But as like with Greg, several that have been around for 18 plus years as well. For a variety of service for school boards, everything from legislative, policy services, board development, superintendent search, so just a variety of things to help you be the best school board team, the best district you can. Okay. And we are the primary provider of professional development for school boards in the state of Minnesota. And so we, at this time, we have all public school districts in the state of Minnesota who voluntarily belong to MSBA. So we appreciate that. All right. So what is a school board? I think I'm going to pass this over to Paula. What exactly is a school board? Is it the PTA, the PTO? Is it a committee? What is it, Paula?
Well, it's funny you say that, Katie. When my children were in elementary school and I was very active in our PTA, and then when I decided to run for school board, I wasn't exactly sure what the role and what the responsibilities would be. If you look at state statute, Minnesota state statute, it is in law that the care and the management and control of the district is vested in the school board. And so you have those power and authorities from the state. And so really, when you look at the 2 primary goals, and we talk here, the last one I'll mention is you have 1 employee. We often refer to that as the CEO of the organization, 1 employee that the school board hires and evaluates and directs, and that is the superintendent. And so often, there may be some confusion or just some questioning about, okay, do I need to know everything about education? I am not a teacher. I don't have a lot of prior experience. And that's not the case. We have people from all different fields and backgrounds that serve, and actually I think that's a strength because you have multiple perspectives that can bring different vantage points. But at the end of the day, it is there to make sure that we are having that you're leading with an effective and efficient governance structure so that you can ensure an equitable education for each and every child in your district. And that is through policy. And we'll talk about that a little later in terms of some of those primary responsibilities along with the hiring of the superintendent. But policy governance and being able to govern efficiently is, for your students, is really the primary purpose.
Thank you. So the next question is, should I run for the school board? And I'm going to toss this over to Greg and Paula. If a person's asking themselves and questioning, how effective can I be, and should I run for the school board? Greg?
Well, I'll kick it off and basically start with, why do you want to run? Because if it's only one issue, you got another thing coming, because there are a million issues that school boards have to deal with. And once that one issue is taken care of, what are you going to do for the next 4 years? So if you're concerned about more than a single issue, that's a good reason to run.
The second one is, do you have the mindset and the approach that you are there to be a public servant to serve the greater good? And what is going to yield the greatest impact for the most students in the most beneficial way possible with the resources that you have? So really that focus on the greater good.
And the next one is looking at interested in problem solving. Because especially in this year, when you're facing 3 different scenarios on going back to school, you've got your hands full with a lot of problems this year. So can you work together with the other members on the board as a team to solve these problems? And again, it is a team approach. It's not 7 Lone Rangers.
Mm-hmm. Right, and Greg nailed it. It is a team. And so when you think of, no one board member as an individual has any power. They have a voice and they have a vote, but really the only power that a board member has is when that team comes together as a collective to take votes and to take action on behalf of the school district. But for your students to really benefit, there needs to be a team approach where you are taking care of each other, and a high tide lifts all boats, and really making sure that you have that mindset that you're going to be working with one another, not against one another, for your students.
Great. Whoops. All right, Greg, so if I'm the right person to be running, how do I become a candidate?
Yes. School board members are elected during the November general election. We have 333 districts. About 300 of them have them in the even year cycle, but there are about 30 or so that have them in odd year in November. The terms are all for 4 years, and at least 3 members will be on the ballot during each election. Some boards have 6 members, some have 7, so depending on the year, there might be 4 people up for election, and the next cycle will be 3. And most school board members are elected to at-large positions, which means you represent the entire school district, not a certain part of the school district. The school district filing period is coming up. It's late July, so starting July 28th, filing opens. It goes through August 11th. And to file, you will need to file an affidavit of candidacy form with your school district clerk. So those forms are available in the campaign finance manual at your county auditor. The school would have them. Also, you can download them from the Secretary of State's office. Now, the filing fee is $2, so it doesn't cost a lot to run. And this year, because of the pandemic, the electronic filing and payment is allowed. So if you want to file it electronically, remember you have to get that notary on the affidavit. Some of the banks could do that for you, or anyone at the county, city, or your school election officer could also do that. So you could file it electronically or mail it in. This year, because of the pandemic, you do not have to come in person if you don't want to do that. I just got a note that, can everybody hear me?
There's a little feedback, Greg, at least that I'm hearing.
Okay. I had a note on my laptop that my mic wasn't working for a while.
That's better.
Okay. Eligibility is you have to be 21 years old by the time you start serving. So by the first Monday in January, you need to be 21. You must be an eligible voter. You have to be in the district at least 30 days prior to that election date. And it must not be a convicted felon where your rights have not been restored. I will also make a note that you can run for election if you're a district employee. However, if you earn more than $8,000 in a fiscal year and you win, you'll have to decide, do I want to keep the job and turn down the school board spot? Or if I want the school board spot, I'll have to turn down the job. Financial reporting. And again, this is going to be in that campaign finance manual that you get when you file your candidacy. Or if you do it electronically, the school election officer will electronically send it to you. But whenever your campaign has received or spent $750, it triggers a requirement that you have to file a campaign finance report. So be aware of how much money you take in and how much money you spend. And all candidates, no matter how much you raise, at the end of your campaign after the election day, you have 7 days to turn in a campaign financial form. It's called the campaign filing form. And that just says, I didn't raise $750 or spend $750, or I did. And all the forms are in that campaign finance manual.
So Greg, there was a question that says, what if our school district isn't set up to receive electronic payments? Couple of things, and I'm sure you can refer to it as well. Keep in mind that's for the district office to be looking into, and they can, Greg, you probably have a resource. Should they call and talk to you about that, or who should they talk to about getting that figured out?
Well, if they can't accept electronic payments, they can still have people mail them a check. As long as they receive that check before the filing period ends. Otherwise, if they don't, electronic filing may not be the way they want to go.
Great.
Because they do need to receive the payment.
So check with your school district to find out how it is that they're receiving those payments and that filing. Great. Okay. And then also a question of how often do we need to file the campaign financial form, the finance report?
Again, it really depends on when you hit the $750 mark. Once you hit it, you'll have to file something, and then it's 10 days before the election and 7 days after the election. And then if you have a campaign finance fund, you'll have to file it until the money is all gone from that campaign finance fund.
Okay. Do you have a feeling at all for what an average is somebody receives as far as raising funds for a campaign?
Oh, yeah. You know, this never used to be a problem in school board races. There was a law passed a few years ago that the school district now has to post all those forms on their website and then submit them on to the campaign finance board. Well, you know, the first year that it was in place, we hardly had any, other than if you're in a big metro district, hardly anyone ever hit that 750 mark. But we're seeing more and more people spending that kind of money and receiving that kind of money on school boards. So, you know, it's not uncommon anymore.
Right. So, Greg, I'm sorry, Paula, did you just, can you share with what the link is that you just shared there? You're on mute.
Thank you. I always like to model what it looks like when someone's on mute and then not on. Need to unmute themselves. So yes, this is from the state, the Campaign Finance Board. It's an amazing resource. You can call. Every time I've had to call, I always get a live person, and so they can really walk you through any question that might come up around reporting, around anything to do with the finance aspect of your campaign.
Right. And any type of donation, those kinds of things, they could answer those questions. So there was a question regarding if somebody were to buy signs for a candidate, do they need to report that? So you can go to the cfb.mn.gov and they'll have more answers for that. All right. Great. Fundamental roles of a school board. So what are those fundamental things, those basic things that you'll be focused on as a school board member and part of the school board team. You're most effective when you focus on that bigger picture. It's when we as school board members want to try and what we refer to as micromanage. So telling perhaps teachers or administrative staff how to do their jobs, right? We have a kind of a chain of command, chain of respect, chain of communication, just like you would in every in other jobs that you would have as well. So for teachers, they get evaluated certainly by the principal. The principal is evaluated by the superintendent, and then you as a board would evaluate the superintendent, right? And so you want to make sure that you're keeping to that area, but it's important then for there to be guidance, right? For your staff, your district, your students, and understanding. And so you're looking at, you're focusing on the big picture. So you're creating policy or reviewing policy or updating policy, certainly setting goals and that strategic plan for the school district so everybody understands what it is as a school district we're going to be, what we're shooting for, right? What we're moving forward. And it's also important to do that community engagement, those engaging of those stakeholders. And that's, you know, there's all kinds of stakeholders or customers, if you will, everything from certainly your students to your staff to your community members, and engaging them to find out. And there's processes for that. And so when you are setting your strategic plan, or perhaps there's a specific topic that you would bring people in to want to get that information. You hire, direct, and evaluate the performance of the superintendent. And they are the ones that are handling that day-to-day management of the school district. And so they are the ones that are going, in the schools, but also working with the administrative team and all those others. They are certainly that CEO that's overseeing the school district, and you are the board of directors, who are helping guide and give that direction. So the role of the school board is it's the entity legally charged with governing a school district. Each school board is responsible to its community for governing efficiently and leading effectively to provide for equitable education, resulting in high student achievement. And this is in student achievement for all. This is for all students, right? Not just you and yours. So like when I ran for the school board, my children were actually quite young. And so I wasn't there for just the families with kindergarten and elementary age children, right? I was there. Certainly we made decisions about that. That was a perspective that I brought, but it's also, I'm there for the entire school district. Okay. So I need to keep that in mind. And sometimes I know, including myself, we need to be reminded of that too. Okay. Moving on to the next piece, one of the things that MSBA has worked on, and we're just going to touch it here briefly, but these are 5 basic things. So the 5 standards for school board leadership, and we refer to these kind of as those 5 pillars that you look at these 5 core standards that help you be the best school board, the best school board member, the best school district that you can. But focusing on and understanding that good conduct and ethics. We're finding out more than ever, certainly with social media and all kinds of things, that our staff, but certainly our students, right? And our communities are watching. Are we having good conduct and ethics? It doesn't mean we all always get along and, like hold on to hands and sing kumbaya by any means, but it is that we are having good conduct and ethics at the board table, good discussion. Really, that's what they want to see and hear, is that you're having good discussion, and that's what you're basing those decisions on, is the information that you're getting from your staff and your community, having discussion around that, and then also good conduct at the board table, good conduct and ethics at the board table, and then away from the board table as well. Because if you've ever worked with a team or had a relationship, what you do face to face is important, but also when you walk away and we're at the local gas station, or we get stopped in the grocery store or something, how do we manage and handle those questions and those kinds of things, and being respectful of one another as well. So that vision, putting that strategic plan in place, what do we see our district doing, right? 3 is the structure. In order to get some of those, certainly in order to get those things done, we have to have some sort of structure. And that's not just the 4 walls, right? Not just those brick walls, but what other kind of structure do we have in place? Excuse me, around staffing, curriculum, those kinds of things. What kind of structure is in place to make sure we can provide for our students and for our staff as well? And accountability. So as I said earlier, there's that chain of command, chain of respect. And so that is where the board, right, oversees the superintendent, who then oversees the administration, the principals, who are then going to oversee and evaluate their building or their staff, and their the teachers. And then the teachers are there in the classroom with the students and holding them accountable as well. Advocacy and communication. You need to be the biggest cheerleader, whether it's for your school district and education overall, but you need to be an advocate for that, and also good communication into what it is that you're doing well, what it is that we all know we can improve upon, but communicating that not only as board members with the superintendent, but also to the community as well. So those are the 5 standards that we put in place and we like to talk about. All right, let's move on to the next piece. So Paula, what qualities make a good school board member?
Well, we've talked about it several times before, but it really is about how can you create, you and your colleagues, your board team, create the conditions so that each and every child can achieve and can succeed and can thrive. And so we talk a lot with our board governance model. At the center and the heart of that is student achievement for all. And that really should be the driving piece of your conversations, of your actions. It should all go back to how is this going to impact and improve student achievement. Katie mentioned about being an advocate and being passionate about public education, really known as the cornerstone of our democracy, and the influence that boards have to help shape and really grow very thoughtful and productive, engaged citizens in our community. Difficult decisions. If you've been watching, just you see the local elected, whether it's on your city council or maybe in your local school board, you know that people who are elected to those public positions have to make difficult decisions. And there can be a lot of pressure under that. I know when I was on the board that you are not going to make everyone happy. And that's just, it's just not possible. And I think that when you come to the table and you know that student achievement is really the North Star in which you're looking toward, you make decisions that are aligned with that, and then you move forward. But there's going to be very difficult decisions that come down the pike, whether it's around finances or policies or whatever it might be. Strong communicators, absolutely. People want to come to you, things about their children, about curriculum, about sports, whatever it might be. We're not there to solve every problem on our own, but we do need to be listeners. We need to validate concerns and be open and receptive to hearing what our community is telling us. Believers in the democratic process. So that's the beautiful thing about our country, is we elect people to make decisions on our behalf, and then we move forward. So as a board, you'll have 6 or 7 members. Once the majority has spoken, it really does behoove the district and the community to be able to move forward with that decision, because a split board and a broken board can yield to a split and broken community, and that's not good for our kids. Being willing, and again, back to that mindset, and what are your conversations guided around? What are your actions showing? All should go back to the school board business. We're there to serve children, and we don't want to let the adult issues get in the way of us being able to make sure that we're focusing on our student achievement. Governance training. So as with anything else, practice, practice, practice. There's always information that we can learn to become a better school board member, more information that we can learn from one another. I think for me, when I was a school board member, it was such a huge benefit with MSBA because I was able to connect with colleagues from around the state and learn from them, and being able to glean others' wisdom and expertise and really focus on what did good governance and what does good governance look like. And then we talked about it as well, the team member approach, that it is not about one person or one person's agenda, but it's really about how can I be part of a team and part of a collective that is going to focus on student achievement for each and every child in my district.
Great. Super. Thank you, Paula. One of the things that Paula and I get to do is not only work with school board members, but we get to help out and lead really the planning of a couple of our different conferences that we have. And when we have those keynote speakers and prepping them ahead of time, in that conversation we have with them is we remind them that school board members aren't teachers. They're not the administration that are working in the school buildings. But I let them know, these are the ultimate volunteers in that they are there, not because of the compensation, right? But they are there because they are concerned about all children. They're part of a team that oversees the school district, that you take your own time to become even better school board members and learn how to become a better school board member by attending training, and you receive little compensation. Anybody here running for the money? Because there's very little compensation and very little of the kudos. But you're doing good things and you're working really hard for the children in our state of Minnesota. And you are held to a higher ethical standard than any other elected position. If you are elected and you attend our phase 1 training, that first opportunity for us to get to talk a little bit more about what your position will look like, we talk about that. Why are you held to a higher ethical standard? It's because you are dealing with people's children, the most important thing to them, right? Now, other pieces are very important in people's lives as well as, their finances, their homes, their businesses. But when it comes down to it, you're making decision about their children, and that's very, very, very important to them. All right. So in order to do that, make those decisions, Greg, we need to know the law. So can you share with us a little bit about the open meeting law?
Knowing the law, that's always a good thing. So public entities have to do business in the open. Unless you have an exception that allows for a closed meeting, and those exceptions are very few. So it's just part of the deal about being on a public board. Your business is going to be conducted in the public. The public has a right to observe that meeting. They have a right to know when and where it is, and they have a right to inspect the packet of information that's given to the board members. There should be one in the meeting room. But as far as public participation, like many boards have open forums, that is simply a courtesy that your board grants to the public so they can comment. There's nothing in law that requires a board to even have an open forum or public comment. There's a few instances where there's public hearings on things, but as far as an open forum, there's no law that requires that. Sometimes when meetings are set, they might meet monthly or maybe a couple times a month, but something might come up where you need to take action. You can't wait until the next month's meeting. Then you would have what's called a special meeting. And that special meeting must be officially posted with 3 days notice before the meeting occurs. And like any meeting, in order to have the meeting, a quorum of your board members must be present. So if you have a 6 or 7 member board, at least 4 people have to show up. It also comes with data privacy laws, and once you're a board member, you have access to some confidential information. Maybe there's disciplinary information or educational information on a student, health information, and you need to maintain that privacy or confidentiality. So if you don't, what happens is all of a sudden you're opening up the district and yourself to lawsuits. And that's why it's very important that you, as an elected member, keep the confidentiality of confidential information.
So Paula, there is that confidential information, but then also what is a public record? What is something that the public could potentially have access to?
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who may already be really engaged in your district and are following school board meetings, you know that there is a packet, and the public has the right to see all documents, and all documents, unless they are protected personnel data, but all documents that the board is viewing, the public has the right to see those as well. And so as far as email communications, Greg had mentioned before that public business, and if it's at the core of that is the public. And so any kind of correspondence that you are having about school board business is really public data. So whether that's an email to another board member, an email to your superintendent, an email to a constituent, those are all public data. So we really encourage board members to use their school board address that most board members will get assigned when they become elected and take office in January of that following election year. And so the district will maintain those records. And again, they are open and available to any and all people. They may be redacted, of course, if there's, again, private or personnel information, but really school board business is available and must be revealed to the public. And as far as the policies go, we really look at the 200 policies. And again, many of you may have seen these on your own district's website, and MSBA has a series of model policies as well. But the 200 policies pertains to all about school boards. So we talk about the conduct and ethics. We talk about what does the structure look like. We talk about how do you create and implement a policy, all of those things. So the 200s are really designed to talk about all of the roles and responsibilities of how a school board governs and how they operate. So continuing on the work, we talked about this earlier, the communication with the stakeholders, all right? As a representative of the community, really want to make sure that your community is brought along and that they know why the decisions are being made, they know how the decisions are being made. And one thing that I always like to remember is that, for those of you whose meetings are recorded, remember and be mindful that someone may be turning in for the very first time. And so being able to give some context and some historical information so people can be brought up to speed and are really aware of how and why you're making the decisions that you're making. Of course, the student achievement, working with your superintendent and his or her team to make sure that you have a grasp of how are the goals that are laid out in your strategic plan, how are they all going back to student achievement? Because the board ultimately is responsible for making sure that you're delivering those outcomes for your students. As far as teachers' contracts, paras contract, principal contracts, the board will be in charge and overseeing and has the authority to approve all of those. Some of districts have a legislative action committee. We did in the district where I served, and MSBA also has a day at the Capitol. So we go back to that being a leading advocate in public education, and for you as a school board member, being a leading advocate for public education. And so really being able to use your voice and to advance the issues that are most important in public education for your students. Again, the one employee that you hire and evaluate, your superintendent, and MSBA helps with that is not only school board self-evaluations to monitor and engage in that continuous improvement, but also for your superintendent to make sure that he or she is has her or his goals aligned with the district strategic plan and is meeting the goals that have been set forth by the board and the superintendent. And often in the community, the school district really is one of the largest employers. I know it is in our area, and you may have, you know, whether it's several hundred or maybe even thousands of teachers or staff. And so a really big public presence in your community, and they really are a pillar in the community in terms of the services that they provide and the connections they have to other civic organizations or other organizations that are in your community as well.
Great, thanks, Paula. A school board member code of ethics. Paula was talking about the 200 policies just a moment ago. And what I encourage you to do is wherever your district policies are, if those are on your website, or perhaps it might be something you need to call the district, since walking into the district office is not something as easily done right now, but asking them where and how you can find those district policies. Policy 209, if your district follows the model policies MSBA has, it is the code of ethics, and that's the code of ethics for the school board. And here's just a highlight of some of those, but be prepared for and attend the board meetings. So you've been elected, and so you want to make sure you're there providing that representation, but also it's important for you to be prepared. So you will get information, you'll get a packet. At one point it was paper, and some boards still do paper, others do something electronic. But it is that information that is providing you pieces to read and understand and to study in order for that good conversation to happen around the board table, as we had talked about a little bit earlier. So being prepared and coming to those board meetings so you can have that good conversation, because if you show up and you're just reading it as we go through the meeting, you're going to miss things. The conversation will not be as rich and as thoughtful, and your meetings will go longer. All right. And making sure that you're focusing on student achievement, not me and mine, and not on maybe what is best for something else or somebody else in the community, but how does it affect student achievement? Focusing on the greater good. So let's look at the entire district and not just individually and what our interests are, excuse me, and that you're representing all stakeholders. So keeping in mind, you are also hearing from your staff, your students, and your community members as well. Supporting the decision of the school board in that we have a board to come together of either 6 or 7, or if we have our new consolidating district up north. Right now you have 13, right? And then you'll be moving into 9, but coming together and having good conversation, voting, right? You make the decision, you vote, and then we need to move on and decide that we're going to support that decision. And then if we need you to come back and relook at and maybe update it a little bit, which is certainly can be done as well. Follow the school board code of ethics policy. So when you have a policy, you have them there for your staff, your students, your community, for your district, for your, for your overall district. And you need to follow policy as well as a school board member. And having, again, that good conduct and ethics at and away from the board table. All right. So remembering that school board members, Your power is when you're at the table, right? It's not at a basketball game and that you're upset with a coach, right? That's not where we work as school board members, to go be out in the community and approach staff, approach students, and taking care of things, right? But we are there to be at the board table, to have that good conversation and to make decisions, right? So respect the school district's chain of command and that chain of responsibility. But yet being able to have some good conversation around that. And a successful school board must function as a team with clear strategies and goals. And so you'll notice the word team here. That team includes your superintendent, because they are by law a member of the school board, but they're a non-voting member. And so you want them to be there and be a part of that team, because those voting board members, right, are going to have that that vote. And then, but your superintendent is going to work with staff to carry it out. Okay, so we want the team to be working together to figure those things out. Okay. Professional development, important for you, just as you would expect your students and staff to do what they can to become better students, better staff members. You're going to want to become and be the best school board member you can be as well. And there's a variety of ways you can do that, but we also offer certainly what we call our phase orientation series, where we go and talk about many different things and help you explore different things and how you can be an even better school board member. Finance and management training is developed by MSBA in consultation with the Minnesota Department of Education, and that is training that is required by state statute. It's required because our state has found it important that our school board members, those elected officials, understand and know the finance and management and understanding of how it works in the school district and being able to make those decisions. Okay. I know there has been a question in the chat box, and it was around the ballots. So you have your incumbent members, and then you have anybody else that's running for the school board. And so all of those would be up. So those seats are up for election, and then you do have incumbents, but that does not mean they would necessarily run unopposed. So it looks like Greg worked on answering that in there as well in the chat box. So what can you do to be ready to join your school board team? Greg, what do you got for them?
Well, I think the first thing that you could do is probably start attending the board meetings if you aren't already. And it's always good to sit down with the superintendent or even the board chair and learn what is the role of a board member and what is expected of a board member. And that third point down there, I'd also really emphasize. Every board has a strategic plan. In that strategic plan, they set their goals on what they want to accomplish in the next year or 2 or 3. So it's important that you look at that, so when you get on the board, you'll know what those goals are and how the board is going about trying to accomplish that. So those 3 things alone, I think, can give you a big head start when you come onto a board.
Great. Great. Thanks, Greg. When does your term begin? So you will be elected in November, right? Elections take place then. And then you have a lot to do in learning about your board and getting information and being ready for that first Monday in January. So not January 1st, but the first Monday in January is when a school board member takes their seat. And that is when you are officially a school board member. There's a lot of things that happen in between there, including some papers that need to be filed and some information to get you up to speed, as Greg just talked about. But you officially start as a school board member. Your term begins the first Monday in January. All right. Okay, so it's the first Monday in January. Paula, then what?
So as you can imagine, there is a tremendous amount of information that you will be inundated with, from the budget to the policies to reports, and you'll start hearing a lot of different acronyms. And what's really important is being able to have a mentor, a seasoned or a veteran board member who really can help provide some of that historical and institutional knowledge that they may have. So, for example, you come on and maybe you didn't know about a decision that had been made 5 years ago that maybe is still having some reverberating effects in your work now. And so that mentor can offer some of that history and insight and just give you some context to help you better understand about where the district has been and how you can help shape the vision going forward. And so we offer with our phase trainings, as Katie had said, that's available for all of our members, where oftentimes we'll have a mentor come in with the new board member, the mentee, and doing that phase workshop together so they can learn from one another, because you as well will have your fresh perspective that is needed to the board. And so being able to be able to dialogue and go through some of those core tenets of what it is of the role and responsibility of a board member. And that really stems out throughout your tenure, really, until that maybe one day you will then become a mentor. But lots of opportunities throughout MSBA for you to connect with board members who have served anywhere from a year to 40 years. So being able to really tap into that network of members through MSBA as well.
All right, super. You've been great. You've been asking questions in the chat area. If there's any more, we'll give it a couple more minutes for you to go ahead and put something in there. Otherwise, you can certainly turn your, you can unmute yourself and let us know if you have any questions. But we want to thank you for being here today. And as we talked about, we give you a general overview, but questions more specific to your district as far as how many committees are we on? How frequently do we meet? And, you know, any other questions, that is something that your superintendent, your school board chair can help answer for you because each district manages that a little bit differently. So certainly let them know with any of those questions. All right.
Katie, may I just add, I think another important consideration is to really look at serving on the school board as a family commitment.
Sure.
And as a family decision. And there is an extraordinary amount of time and energy and other resources that you will pour into your work because you will be so invested, and you of course care about your students and you want to do the very best job. And that often can, you know, have real impact on other people in your life. So just going into it eyes wide open and just knowing what your capacity is, what your family's capacity is, and knowing what you're able to offer.
Yeah, excellent point, Paula. And really having that conversation with those others in your life, whether it be a significant other, if you have children, and perhaps others that are going to help you navigate this commitment as well. So we got a question here. I'm curious about how districts statewide are handling the challenge of budget shortfalls and considering voter-approved levies during a period of economic instability. Anybody want to take that one? Greg?
Well, it is a fine line. I mean, every community walks that tightrope of we have X amount of money that we need to make sure all students succeed, and they got to walk the line on the other side of we can't spend more than what our community taxpayers can afford. So they are tough questions, and if they need money and the state isn't providing it, the operating levy is one way that they can get extra money from the community. Again, there's lots of organizations that can go survey a community to see what that threshold is, so you're not asking for too much. But operating levies are the one way that school districts can get some additional income.
Mhm, mhm. And to add to that, Greg, we didn't go into it super in depth here, but in terms of the revenue that is generated for per pupil spending really comes from the state and then those local property taxes. And so there's much bigger conversations that are happening at the state and federal level in terms of how that might exacerbate some inequities depending on where you happen to live in the state. And so very nuanced and complex in terms of kind of the ramifications of how those levies, both voter approved and non-voter approved, can impact the resources that are available to a community.
Great. Super. Well, we have listed on here our website. So make sure you pay attention to that. It's mnmsba.org. If you go to just msba.org, you end up like at the Missouri State Bar Association or something. So make sure you put that MN in there first. And there are a lot of resources on there. There are some things that are password protected, but I think you'll find a lot of other pieces, resources, certainly around the pandemic and some of the challenges that we have had and are having. So. All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today. Again, we encourage you, if you know of somebody else that's considering running for the school board, that you encourage them to come to our website and look for the recording. It'll be up in the next couple of days, and we hope to see you in the fall. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.